When you run a small business, you are regularly confronted with questions from customers about why you do the things you do. And the reason you often get these questions is because people know, unlike a big business, that they're likely to get an answer. And so, whereas you might not email an Amazon, a Zara, one of these big companies, you might not email them and say to them things like, why are your kits so expensive? Why haven't you released more designs? Why won't you extend that sale for me? You might not email those because you just assume you're not going to get an answer, whereas you actually would probably email a small business. And some of those questions really make you have to dig deep into why have you chosen to make the decisions you've chosen. So in this series, I'm going to answer some of those questions which we regularly receive, and I hope this will show you just how much thought, care and love has gone into making every part of this business. So this is an absolute classic question. I love your products. I'd love to do one of your kits, but why are they so expensive? And it is a totally fair question. My kits are more expensive than some others you might find on the market. And so I think it's a really important question to answer, because your pricing not only reflects the materials that go into your product, but it reflects your values as a business. And our kits are priced at a level which reflects the things that I value about this business. So when you start a small business, you are confronted with a whole host of decisions. You get choices about where you want to work, how you want to work, who you want to work with, what suppliers you want to support, how many designs you want to launch, how many hours you want to work in the week. But you also get confronted with all those bigger picture questions, like how fast do you want to grow? What ultimate scale do you want to achieve? Do you want a job that in the long run is building to something enormous, or do you want something that feels small, secure? Do you want your customers to come to you because your product is the cheapest, because they'll receive it the fastest, or because you have great longevity, because your designs are the most original? What are the reasons why anyone would choose to shop with you? Right at the beginning of any business, they get to make these decisions. And those decisions then inform everything about the way you experience the product. So when I started my business, when I was confronted with those same decisions, I made certain choices. Choices about the quality of the product I wanted people to have once they'd finished making it. Choices about supporting the small businesses I wanted to work with. Choices which have then been reflected in why things are priced the way they're priced. So yes, every kit that we do contains the same materials a lot of other embroidery kits out there on the market would contain. There is going to be fabric, threads, hoop, needles, instructions, the essentials everyone needs for a sewing project. But there are also elements that we include in ours which no one else includes. There are ways which we pack them, which no one else does. There are accompanying guides, videos that we have that other companies don't necessarily think are needed. And there are qualities and components, tangible and intangible, that aren't purely reflected in what is in the box. So first up, let's talk materials. Now when we choose the materials we want to include in our kits, we can choose from a whole range of different sources. We can choose everything from your polyester cottons from China to your pure 100% silk threads from America. You know, there's all these different ends of the spectrum when it comes to materials. But what we have focused on throughout is working wherever we can with British suppliers, working wherever we can with smaller businesses to support their businesses too, and making sure the materials we use are things that we would want to have as part of an object which we have poured hours and hours into. So for example, if I make a needlepoint cushion, I don't want to make that with some kind of poly wool blend, where the whole way I'm working with it has that slightly plasticky feel. When it goes on the sofa, it has that slightly plasticky feel. I want to use 100% wool. But more than wanting to use 100% wool, I want to use British wool, because we're in Britain, we have an amazing wool industry, we should support British wool. And when we go through that, then we want to work with a small supplier who uses and dyes British wool, so we choose to work with Appleton. Now, Appletons aren't the cheapest. I could import some wool from China, I could pay a lot less for it. But I make the choice, which is my prerogative to do, that that's not the way I want the product to be. So the fundamental choices I make about the quality of the materials are reflected in the price. It means that I have made a decision that will make inevitably the end product a bit more expensive because I've decided this is what I think should be used for creating my designs. And whilst those eventual costs of our finished products therefore will be higher, I believe that reflects true value and quality in what you receive. But as I said before, a kit is not purely the materials that go in the box. If the value is literally me totting up the fabric, the threads, the hoop, the needles, of course they would be cheaper than they are. What is reflected in the price is also the original design. Every single piece we create is an original artwork. Some of those take months, if not years, to develop, and along the way there are many failed designs which do not make the cut. Just as you wouldn't buy a print from an artist and expect it to purely be the cost of the piece of paper and the inkjet printer ink, why would you expect when you buy a kit for embroidery designs it purely to be the cost of the physical materials in there? There is a value attributed to the time that has gone into creating that design. And that time is not merely the hour that was spent when you sat down and drew it. It is the hours that precede that with a sketchbook, reading books, visiting galleries, getting inspiration to create something truly original, which obviously we feel has real artistic merit and value. And that time deserves to be reflected in the pricing of the end product. Because if it isn't, how can you ever afford to dedicate appropriate time to creating new designs in future? The third element that impacts the pricing is the experience you're going to have when you make the product. When we ship a kit out from our studio, that is only the beginning of our work. From that moment the kit arrives with you, all you have is bits and pieces. You then have to make the finished result. And so our job really begins then. How do I make that process enjoyable? How do I make it stress-free? How do I ensure you come out with a really great piece at the end of it? And whilst you might think the way that we package our kits feels extravagant, maybe you think it feels unnecessary, but actually this is absolutely integral to the experience you are going to have. There's a reason we send things in beautiful boxes. There's a reason our needlepoint kits come in a sewing bag. It's to make you get excited, to make you want to make. Every single day, at the end of the day, we want you to open your box and we want you to reach for that box of threads. We want you to get your materials out to feel like, oh, I can't wait to spend an hour sewing tonight. Because if you feel like that, you're far more likely to actually finish the piece. If what you actually received was just the very basic raw materials packed up in a little box, then would you feel that same excitement? If the instructions weren't really clearly, beautifully printed, in colour, which, side note, a lot of embroidery kits are not printed in colour, how hard would it be for you to actually understand how to do it? Every component that goes into the packaging is designed to encourage you to enjoy the making process, and through that, we encourage you to fall in love with sewing. It means we have to have certain things, like we have to have videos that go alongside the kit. We have to show you how you're going to do every single step of the way. We have to have beautiful, high-quality imagery on the website so you can easily go in and zoom in and see, oh, that bit's stitched this way. We have to have all these other intangible bits that also go around the product, not only the beautiful packaging, but we have to have every other element to make sure that when you receive it, you have an amazing experience. Again, a lot of those elements are not things that are necessarily reflected in what's inside the box. And whilst you may say to me, well, I actually don't think I need all that stuff, I think I'd do it anyway, our numbers speak for themselves. The amount of customers who actually finish their products, the return customer rates that we have are off the scale compared to a lot of other businesses, and reflects the fact that people get these and they finish them. And that is my mission. My job as the business owner, my thing I am most passionate about is getting people sewing. The experience matters, and again, that is my prerogative to choose. Of course, there are cheaper ways to do this. We could use off-the-shelf designs, we could use mass-produced materials, we could outsource loads of our labour. We don't have to be based in central London, we don't have to be based in this nice studio. But that's not the kind of business I want to run. That's not the day-to-day I want to have. And as the person who started the business, as the person who pours their soul into it every single day, I can choose that. And if I want my pricing of my kits to reflect the fact that we have a nice studio, that we pay our team fair salaries, again, that is a choice that I get to make. So we know that because of how we price our kits, we're not for everyone. We know that £80 for an embroidery kit is a lot of money. And whilst we do try to ensure we have something at different ends of the scale, there are always going to be people out there who can do what we do cheaper. But can they create the experience that we can create? Do they have the integrity of the designs that we have? Do they have the originality? I don't think so. We're not pricing our kits in order to get rich. We're not pricing because we're being greedy. We're pricing because that is how we have to do it in order to be able to have the business we want to have. It's also important whenever you are looking at a business to not forget all the invisible bits that they are being charged to even do a transaction with you. 20% of the price you pay for an order immediately goes off in sales tax. That was never our money. 3% of the value of what you pay goes out in transaction fees just to merely process the payment. Then there's things like business rates in the UK. There's all the different taxes we have to pay. There's insurance. We have incredibly high hosting fees for our website. Don't get me started on how much it costs to run an email newsletter. An email newsletter is an incredibly expensive thing. There are 100 other expenses going out to the business every day, which, unless you run a business, you don't really realise are there, which every single kit has to contribute to. Every single purchase has to have a percentage of it go to cover all those fixed costs. And the key thing is, this is not a side hustle. This is a commercial business. We can only succeed in life if we are profitable. That's the only way we can keep going. And so we have to make sure that all those costs are being covered. We can't just do this as a passion project because I physically, mentally, emotionally cannot afford to. Through all this, I hope I've given you a good level of clarity. I know I went on a bit, but it's a topic I'm super passionate about because I think it's really important that people feel like they can ask about pricing, but I do think it's also important that you understand that there's not a load of greedy people out there just trying to make a quick buck. There's a lot of very considered business owners out there. And if you ever doubt the pricing on something like this, then one thing that's always important to bear in mind is companies like Gucci will sell a hair bobble for $400. If I am trying to sell a beautiful kit like this for £40, believe me, I am not getting rich on it. So whilst small businesses inevitably get more questions than big business, I think every time you are looking at a product, remind yourself first that pricing doesn't just reflect the things you physically see. It reflects all the values, all the invisible costs, all the things that enable that business to keep existing. And in all likelihood, it is priced incredibly fairly, or, if they're anything like all the small businesses I know, probably a little too low.